Do men really want a fit woman? Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I'm going to take a minute and woman-splain mansplaining for a second. Or woman-splain the manosphere. I've had a lot of requests to talk about the hypocrisy of the manosphere and, the alpha male podcast bro community. And every time I get ready to post a video on their hypocrisy, there's so many, like the list gets so long that I'm like, oh my god, the video would be a million years. So I thought maybe I would kind of sprinkle them in here and there and focus on like a specific topic when it came to manosphere hypocrisy. And I want to talk a little bit about that when it comes to like women's bodies, the beauty standard, and the concept of men saying they want a fit woman. So I kind of got to thinking about this topic because a lot of the sort of the manosphere, the alpha male podcast bro, Andrew Tate, tater tots, like those kind of people, when they talk about what they want in a woman, it's either like fit, feminine, submissive, or every video that talks about like what men are looking for in a woman, men will always start out with like, men don't want much, just fit body. Fit body is literally the first thing that they say. Like that's the most important thing, like fit body. As long as a woman's fit, that's all that matters, right? And I've talked about this concept in like a few other videos. There's one particular kind of like podcast bro who like constantly shames overweight women. Like he'll throw in that he doesn't like overweight women like randomly, like when it doesn't have anything to do with the topic. Like this guy clearly has a thing for overweight women because they're on his mind all the time. I understand like if a guy's like, I just don't prefer to date overweight women, or if somebody asks like, do you have a body size preference, or what's your type? If he does not want to date an overweight woman, fine, like no problem. That's your preference. You're allowed to have a preference. But like if you're just like constantly throwing in like randomly in conversation, like if someone's like, hey, how's the weather? And you're like, I don't like fat chicks. Like they're on your mind. Like there's obviously something going on there that you feel like you have to throw that in all the time. I'm always leery of some of these podcast bros that get so obsessed with like shaming a group of women, very often overweight women, or the guys that are like, oh, all the women in America are overweight, so we have to go to another country, when like the obesity epidemic is actually for men and women. So it's not like it's just women in America that are gaining all this weight. Men in America are gaining a lot of weight as well. So like, is there an obesity epidemic in this country and there's like a serious issue when it comes to people's health? Absolutely. But it's across the board. Like in America, it's across the board. It's not like men are doing so great here in America and women are the ones dropping the ball, right? And I also want to say, like, nothing I say in this video is to ever discourage people from like leading a healthy lifestyle, from taking good care of your body and actually honoring your body. I think that's important for everybody, but I think especially for women as feminine beings. Feminine energy is the body. So part of being a feminine being is actually caring for your body in loving ways. That means keeping your body moving and active in ways that feel good for your body. That means eating healthy foods that nourish your body and actually support you in your lifestyle. I'm a big advocate of taking good care of yourself and taking good care of your body. And when I say that, I don't mean like torturing yourself and like starvation or anything like that. And I go into this much deeper in my video about like masculine, feminine myths and fitness. It dives into a lot of these concepts much deeper. And I do touch a little bit on the concept of like men and their obsession with women's like fitness and stuff. But it's interesting because I had an observation about my past relationships that kind of got me thinking a little bit about this obsession that men had with like fit women. It wasn't consistent with what I had experienced in everyday life. And I started to create this theory, and it's starting to play out exactly the way that I predicted. While I do think based on my astrology chart I have psychic abilities, I also think that men are very predictable. I think when you live a certain amount of life as a woman and you really pay attention to men, you start figuring out like where things are going. So I feel like the narrative around women and having fit bodies is shifting And I saw this shift happening and going exactly the way that it's going. So I kind of wanted to point it out, if for no other reason to just to brag about how I'm right or that I'm psychic. It's my Cancer moon and my Scorpio rising. I don't know what to tell you. And my Sagittarius sun just cannot shut up about it. So, all right, let me just start out with my own personal experience. And I have other videos where I talk about my own fitness background and my fitness struggles and my weight and my weight gain and loss and things like that and whatever. So I'm not going to dive into all the details about it, but I have gained and lost a significant amount of weight over my lifetime. I've been dieting since I was 8 years old. I was a lifetime member of Weight Watchers at age 11. My weight has gone up and down over the years. So I've dealt with men at many different body sizes and times in my life, right? I am somebody, and this is just genetics, and it's interesting how so many people deny that genetics have anything to do with the weight that you carry, when it's actually like scientifically proven that genetics do play a big role in your weight, your body size, how you respond to exercise. Is it the only factor? No. And I don't think that anybody should use genetics as like an excuse to not care for their health. However, genetics do play a big factor in how your body looks, and it also has a big factor in how your body responds to exercises or certain lifestyles. And we know this. We know this inherently. We know there are people who are naturally thin, who don't gain weight easily, maybe even have a hard time keeping weight on, and they also tend to struggle a lot with putting muscle on. They tend to just be naturally very lean and thin. We also know there are people who tend to, you know, stay very lean but gain muscle very easily. And we also know there are people who gain weight and muscle very easily. We know that there are different body types and that people just kind of usually fit into one of these three categories. You know, obviously there's variations, but those are kind of the three main categories that most people tend to fall into. So obviously somebody who has trouble putting on muscle but also can't gain weight is going to need a different set of exercises and possibly a different program than somebody who happens to put on weight and muscle very easily. It's just two different people, two different genetics, right? I am somebody that gets bigger very easily and gets smaller very difficultly. Difficultly, is that a word? I put on weight and muscle relatively easily. It's very difficult for me to lose weight. Now, I don't use this as an excuse by any means, but in order to keep myself in a societally acceptable body size, I have to do a lot more than the average person would need to do in order to be seen as like a societally acceptable weight. It's genetics. It just is what it is. And I'm not saying that as an excuse because I've absolutely done those things. I've done all the work. I've done those things. I've gotten myself into that body size. It's very hard to sustain because it does cut into a lot of other areas of your life. And I've been willing to do that. However, I've had an observation, and it was kind of this like epiphany moment that I had not too long ago actually. In the course of my life, in the course of my dating history, I have never dated a guy that didn't find what I had to do in order to be in a societally acceptable body size to be an inconvenience to him in some way. And it's varied from guy to guy, but I've never dated a guy that didn't find the amount of effort I had to put into my fitness routine or the amount of structure and discipline I had to have in my diet to be an inconvenience to him in some way. In some cases, I did date a guy who actually I think wanted me to gain weight. I think he had his own agenda when it came to that. I think part of it was his insecurity, and he thought if I lost weight and got into shape that like I would decide to leave him. Like I remember with like him specifically, for example, I was dating this guy when I was in college, and there was, my college had like a football field with like a track around it. So when I would have like an early morning class, I would go prepared like in like workout clothes, which bear in mind, back when I was in college, workout clothes were not what they are now. Like they were much more modest and much more covered up. Like I wasn't showing up in like a sports bra and like leggings with like ruching up the butt or anything like that. Like it was just like regular like sweats, right? But I would show up in like sweats and stuff in morning classes, and then before I would go home, I would go and I would like run some laps on the track. That was my cardio for the day. I remember telling my boyfriend at the time that I did this, and he was like, "You were running in public?" And I was like, "I was running on the track at school." And like literally the only other people there were like, that was actually a really popular place for like elderly people to like come and like walk laps. So like there was like 2 little old ladies and a little old guy that was like, that were like walking around the, I mean, that's all it was there. Like there was nobody else around. He was like, but what if other guys saw you? Because, you know, when I run, I tend to attract attention. Back then, I did not have as supportive a sports bra as I do now, I will admit, because they didn't make them back then. But workout wear has come a long way, my God, now that I think about it, but that's a whole other subject. He was like, so like, well, why would you run on the track? Like, why wouldn't you just run on your parents' treadmill at home or something like that? Like, that was a big, like, why would you work out in public? So like, I've dated guys that did not like that I worked out because like, God forbid somebody saw me working out and another man might find that attractive. I would also get guys that like, they didn't not like that I worked out, but because I worked out more often than them and because my dedication to working out was more serious than how they took working out, a lot of them found it very intimidating that I worked out more than they did. And I'm not saying like that they weren't necessarily like stronger or even more fit, because it doesn't take as much for men to get fit as it takes me for sure, but women sometimes, as women are intended to carry more body fat than men are, which is a whole other conversation. However, I think my dedication to working out and my discipline and everything when it came to working out in the past, which to be honest became an obsession for me, that was something that I had to work through, I think was intimidating for them because, you know, in some cases they weren't as disciplined about their workouts as I was. I think also too, spending time working out, they were fine if it was like on my time, but if it was time that inconvenienced them, like if they wanted to do something else or something and I was just like, well, no, I just ran for an hour on the treadmill, like I am all sweaty and now I have to shower and wash my hair and like I won't be ready for a while. It's like they would be so inconvenienced by that because like how dare I have to work out and not like drop everything to spend time with them, you know what I mean, like that kind of thing. And that's just fitness. I think diet wise was even worse because like when I get on a diet I tend to be like obsessively strict with it. Not to say that that's always healthy, but that said, in the past I think a lot of times like guys would get really pissed off because I'd be like, well, first of all, I'm not going to some cheap junk food restaurant because like I'm not eating like cheap junk food. If we're gonna go out to eat, like it's gonna have to be at a place where I have healthy options, which is usually a more expensive place. I mean, maybe it's changed now, I don't really eat out anymore, but like a lot of guys would get frustrated because they'd be like, oh, well, she's ordering something more expensive. It's like, well, healthier food is more expensive. Or groceries are more expensive when you're eating healthy food. So a lot of them would see that like I only bought organic foods or that I would eat, I would buy like higher quality foods, or I wouldn't just buy like cheap junk food or something like that. And they would register that as like me being high maintenance because it's like they were more inclined to buy the junk and they didn't like that I didn't eat junk food. I still don't eat junk food. I also love to cook. I love to cook things from scratch because I love to be in control of the ingredients that I use to make things. And a lot of times I would date guys who were so used to like prepackaged stuff that was full of preservatives that then when I would cook something like clean and healthy, you know, like they weren't used to that. It would be like, well, can't you add a little more of this? Or like they would be upset that I wasn't cooking junk food. Or like if we would go out, I remember getting into fights. It was actually the guy that didn't want me to go running, that would like, if we would order pizza, he would insist on ordering a bunch of breadsticks. And I was like, you can't do that because like I can't be around breadsticks and like not eat them. And he was like, well, just don't eat them. And I was like, no, you just need to not buy them. Like he wanted me to eat them because he didn't want me to lose weight. So he was actually trying to sabotage me, which is a whole other conversation. But like when I'm like, okay, I can't be around like all this junk food because it's not good for me. In the same way that like, if you're gonna be in a relationship with someone who's an alcoholic, like, and you're gonna insist on constantly having alcohol around them, like that's not fair to the person you're in a relationship with. So like, for me to say like, okay, I can't have like a ton of junk food around me because I was deep into like binge behavior before and I was trying to avoid triggers. If I'm like, you can't have this trigger food around me, like if you're gonna eat this trigger food, it's gonna have to be somewhere else or some other time. And it's like, they would get so like, oh, it's so inconvenient. Like, why can't you just not eat it? And it's like, well, because I would prefer this to not be around me. And that's the deal. It's like, if my health and fitness ever inconvenienced the guy at all, it was a problem. Now, with the exception of the guy who I think was actually like trying to fatten me up and trying to destroy my weight loss goals, with most of my other exes, like they didn't want me to gain weight. In fact, a lot of them would like discourage me if I ever like wanted to treat myself. They would like shame me for it or they would talk me out of it or something. Now, if they wanted to have a cheat day or something, like that was perfectly acceptable. And a lot of them would like go out and want me to, I don't know, indulge or splurge or something when they wanted to. But like if it was a time when I wanted to indulge in something, they would like shame me and tell me I shouldn't, which is a whole other category of manipulation. But again, it turned into like they could treat themselves, but like I couldn't. Or if we did treat ourselves, it had to be their decision on their time. Like it was a controlling thing. But again, like most of my exes liked the benefit of having like a girlfriend who was like fit and whatever, but of course I couldn't show it off, because if I actually showed off any of my fitness achievements and I got attention from other guys, then I would get shamed because like, you know, I was advertising or something like that or whatever, which is a whole other conversation. At the end of the day, if you're gonna do all that work on your body, like you're gonna wanna wear things that make you feel good, and then you're probably gonna get attention from other guys. Doesn't mean that I'm gonna like do anything about that attention, but the guys want you to do it just for them, right? Like they like the benefit, but they don't like a woman being like healthy and fit if it inconveniences them in any way. Like they like the end result, but they don't like what a woman has to do in order to get there if it is going to slightly inconvenience them. And this was an observation that I had about my past relationships. So when I started hearing a lot of this manosphere stuff about men liking women who are fit, or like a woman with a fit body, and that was the whole thing, I was a little skeptical. I was like, do they really? Or do they want a woman who is naturally thin? Because in my observation, most guys like the end result, but they don't like what a woman has to do in order to get fit. I also think when I think of like fit, I think of like fitness model. I think of women that have like muscle on them and that have a lot of muscle tone and things. Like that's what I think of when I think of fit, not just a woman who's thin. However, I've come to the realization that when men say fit body or they want a woman who's fit, typically what they mean is they want a woman who's naturally thin. And I remember this because in my video that I did about passport bros, which is a very popular video of mine, there were these guys, of course, passport bros love to jump to, oh, women in America are all just obese, and that's why men need to go to other countries. Of course, men in America are obese too, but they don't want to look at themselves, so that's a whole other conversation. I got these guys that were commenting that they went to other countries. They got this like young wife, half their age, who was fit. But it's interesting because at one point I got into a discussion or an argument with this guy who just kept emphasizing about how fit his wife was. I made some kind of comment or something and he was like, well, my wife eats like 15 times a day. She eats more than me. And I was like, you want a woman that can eat like 15 times a day and eats all this food but is still thin. You realize that that's genetics that has nothing to do with health. I mean, I could eat 15 times a day and I'm a very active person and I would gain massive amounts of weight. If somebody can eat 15 times a day, I mean, unless we're talking about tiny little morsels, and not gain any weight, my guess is they're probably genetically predisposed to not gain weight. So your argument really has nothing to do with a person's health. You guys are looking for women who are naturally thin, which to a certain extent in male logic makes a certain amount of sense, because if a woman is just naturally thin, she's less likely to wake up one day and decide to gain a bunch of weight, which for some reason men live in this perpetual fear of, which I think is insane, but that's a whole other conversation. I've always said, and I believe this very wholeheartedly, that if someone wants you to lose weight and they don't care how you lose weight, they just care that you lose weight, or they don't care how you get skinny or stay skinny, they just care that you stay skinny or, you know, get skinny, then they don't actually care about your health. Because if like health was a factor, then the end result look would be less important and what you were doing to get there would be more important. So I started to come to the conclusion that I don't think that these manosphere bros actually are looking for a woman who is fit. They're looking for a woman who is just naturally genetically predisposed to being thin. It was a working theory until a lot of them started to tell on themselves, right? So the manosphere is kind of interesting because I think it really, you call it manosphere, red pill, podcast bro, alpha male community, has always kind of had its different sort of categories, so to speak. But I feel like there's kind of a split happening. I think some of the people in the manosphere are realizing that there's some contradictory opinions, like they have some overlapping views, but there's some contradictory opinions. And I think you're getting a split between the more like conservative Christian groups of men and sort of the like Andrew Tate kind of like pickup artist bro type guys. And I think that there's overlap in their message, but I think you're seeing a split kind of in the community because there's some areas where they're going in different directions. I've noticed in the more like Christian conservative community of Manosphere people, and again, I'm not knocking anybody's religion or anyone's political beliefs, that's not the point of this, but I'm just talking about the message that I'm seeing in that community. Well, at first there's like this weird message that somehow it's like anti-Christian to gain weight, and like staying fit for your husband is somehow like your way of honoring God. Don't even get me started on that whole thing. I'm not even gonna go there, but like if God did not want women's bodies to change over time, he would have designed pregnancy very differently, but that's a whole other conversation. However, I started to notice more and more content creators from like that area of the manosphere starting to move away from women going to the gym. And I actually heard, I don't remember who the creator was, but I remember hearing one guy summing it up, which I was just like, yep, this is exactly where I thought this was gonna go. He basically said that like women shouldn't be doing any other exercise besides walking because she could do that with a stroller, and that women shouldn't be spending time in the gym working out because that takes time away from her serving her family, and her role is to serve her husband, of course, and then her children if she has any time left. The gym would be doing something for her, even though at the end of the day, like he's convinced that her working out and staying fit would be for him anyway, but that's like too selfish. That's not in service to the family, and that would take time away from her serving her husband and her children. So walking, which is something she could do with a stroller or with the kids, should be the only exercise that women should do. I don't remember who this creator was or where I saw this content because it was not something I wanted to engage with, but like as much as I disagree with that mentality, I was like, all right, at least he's saying the quiet part out loud, because I was waiting for that to be the perspective, because I feel like that's always, I mean, even though I don't have any kids or anything, that's kind of where I always felt like the men that I've known in life or dealt with really were feeling. Like they wanted the end result, like they wanted a woman who was like thin or like in a societally acceptable body size. They didn't want to deal with what she had to do to be in that kind of shape if it inconvenienced them or the family in any way. So like they wanted the end result, but she couldn't have to actually work at it. Which goes to a man wanting a woman who's simply just genetically predisposed to being naturally thin, which is really no different than men who use the argument that they can't help their height because women can't help when they're genetically predisposed to being bigger or smaller. And I'm not saying that as an excuse for like women who aren't naturally thin to like not work out and not exercise, but like there are some women in the world who just don't have to work out as much and they don't have to diet as strictly to be in a certain body size. And there are some women that have to do more. And I'm not saying that like, you know, if you do have to do more to stay in a societally acceptable body size, you know, whether or not you choose to do more or you don't choose to do more is your decision. But whether or not you're genetically predisposed to being able to easily take weight off or having to do extra work to take weight off, totally outside of your control. Like, that's your genetics that you were born into. And in the same way that men have no control over their height, they're just genetically predisposed to that. You can have a preference. If you prefer to date a woman that is just genetically predisposed to being thin, that's fine. But don't complain about women wanting a man who's genetically predisposed to being tall, because it's the same thing. So this was the message I was seeing in sort of like one side of the manosphere, which I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of felt like that's where this conversation was gonna go with the whole fit thing. Is, again, these guys are like kind of finally saying the truth. They want a woman to have the end result, but they don't want the effort she has to take to do that to affect them at all. Like, they still expect her to cook the same foods that he wants. They still expect her to cook the foods to feed him, to feed the family. Like, again, that's part of the manospheres. Like, women are expected to cook but not eat. Which, frankly, I gotta be honest with you, if I'm gonna cook a meal and it's gonna be a good meal, I'm eating it. So anyway, that's one area of the manosphere. The other area of the manosphere, which tends to be more of like the alpha male bro pickup artist kind of area of the manosphere. Women are not designed to have as low a body fat as men are. If you actually look at like fitness competitions, like fitness competitors, the body fat levels that male fitness competitors get to is lower than what female fitness competitors get to. Women start seeing massive side effects in their health, in their hormones, at a much like higher body fat than men do. Now, the men that do these fitness competitions and get themselves into an extremely low body fat, like they do have health side effects. It does affect their hormones, like it affects their sex drive and things like that. Like it absolutely affects aspects of their health. Like getting to a ridiculously low body fat is really not healthy for anybody. But for women, getting to a really low body fat count, not even as low as what men get to in these fitness competitions, but women getting to an extremely low body fat percentage is very dangerous for them. And it inhibits fertility. Generally speaking, and there are exceptions, and there are going to be people that are going to come to me and tell me about their exceptions, but they're exceptions, they're not the rule. But generally speaking, if you can see a woman's ab muscles, she probably has issues with her hormones, which means she's not as fertile. The alpha male argument that they'll use as an excuse for everything is that men are attracted to fertility, which would mean that as a man, if a woman has visible ab muscles, a man would be less attracted to her because she would be showing signs that she's not as fertile. Now, whether she's actually as fertile as, you know, another woman that maybe doesn't have visible abs or something, like, I mean, that would take, you know, blood testing and things like that to figure out. However, in our survival mode brain, like if we were all cave people, a man seeing a woman with a very, very low body fat percentage and visible ab muscles, his instinct to mate is going to say this woman is underweight and probably will not be able to consume enough calories to maintain a pregnancy, so she would not be a viable candidate for impregnating. Now, there is also a flip side to that, where women who have very large midsections, and I say this as a woman who I gain all my weight in my midsection, if you have an excessive amount of weight in your midsection, that also signals to a man's brain that that woman, actually what it actually signals to like our primitive brain, actually there was a woman who studies anthropology who was sharing some of these statistics, it actually signals to a man's brain that that woman could potentially already be pregnant, because, you know, women's midsections expand when they are pregnant, so that she would not be seen as a viable mating partner because she may already be pregnant with, you know, another man's child, so she would not be a good candidate for fertility to carry on his seed, so to speak, right? Again, I'm talking primitive mentality here. I would hope that most of us are beyond just these primal things, but unfortunately, I think some of these men have not evolved past some of these primal mentalities. But like, again, a woman being underweight would usually signal in our primitive brains that that woman was probably not carrying enough body fat to sustain a pregnancy. A woman who was overweight would technically signal to a male's primitive brain that she could potentially already be pregnant, so that he would not want to mate with her because she's already carrying a child, right? So like, in the primitive brain, when men use this argument that they're looking to spread their seed, that drive actually comes from seeing a woman who looks like she is viable for pregnancy, which is typically a woman that has a healthy range of body fat on her body. Women are designed to be softer. Women are designed to be more nurturing. Now look, as I say this, you're a woman who wants to work out in the gym and have, you know, rock hard abs, and you want to have big muscles, and you want to be a power lifter or whatever, go for it. Like, I'm not telling anybody how their body should be, what their body should look like, what it shouldn't look like. I go into this much more in my video about masculine feminine myths in fitness, so check out that video. This is not for me to tell you like what you should look like or what you shouldn't look like. I'm simply pointing out the hypocrisy of this and the mentality that men are having. And there was a push for a while, I think, for guys to expect a woman to be fit, because a lot of these guys were like gym bros, so a lot of them would start fantasizing about these women that were like fitness influencers, when unfortunately a lot of these fitness influencers got their look because of plastic surgery. And I have other videos about like fake versus natural beauty. The idea of fake beauty is a whole other rabbit hole I'm not gonna go down. But that was the beauty standard at the time, was the woman that had like a big butt that she would claim she got in the gym, but she actually got from getting surgery. And that's what guys would fantasize about. It's not actually biology. It has nothing to do with biology, because a woman having an unnatural body type, like a woman having breast implants that are obviously breast implants, does not signal to a man that she's more fertile. So those kind of things that was the beauty trend for a while was not actually signaling to men that they were more fertile. What it was actually signaling to men was that these women were willing to objectify themselves, and these women were sexualized, and these men were responding to the sexualization of these women because of porn culture. That's a whole rabbit hole in itself. However, these alpha male podcast bros in reality are just caught up in the current beauty standard because they see women as status symbols, objects and status symbols. So they were okay with the fit trend as far as like fitness influencers, because most of these fitness influencers in reality were surgically altered. I mean, I'm not saying all of them were, and there are people out there obviously who are into fitness and who were very fit and work out and whatever, but a lot of these really popular fitness influencers, let's be real, have been surgically altered or have done other things to their body through medications or things like that that are altering their body chemistry, which does not make them more fertile, mind you, but gives them a more, it fit them into what was the like Instagram baddie trend, which a lot of these alpha male podcast bros will shame. Like they'll shame women that have that like Instagram baddie look, but those are the women that they go after, right? That's a whole other hypocrisy in itself. Women are meant to naturally have a softer look. Men are designed to have more muscle, and I'm not talking about men having to be like obsessed with gym muscles or anything like that, but men are designed to at least look like they are strong enough to protect, right? Like that's essentially what it is. Like you don't have to be the most muscular guy in the world. Some women are into muscles, some women are not into muscles. Like that varies. At the end of the day, like most women are going to be drawn to a guy who looks like he's at least strong enough to protect her. And men are designed to have a stronger body, and like the softness of a man is not considered as much of a masculine quality, whereas a more feminine quality would be a softer body type. Again, not telling anybody how their body should be. How you want your body to be is your choice. But typically a more masculine body is a stronger, more powerful, like more of a hard body, and a feminine body is something that is a little bit softer. Doesn't have to be like super curvy, but it simply has a softer feel to it. It can be thin, it can be bigger, but it usually has a softer appearance to it. Now it's interesting, I was always convinced that some of these men, sort of like alpha male guys that became obsessed with women having like a rock hard body, like I've seen comments on like women who had like a very like smooth stomach but had like a natural like female curve to it, get massively body shamed because she didn't have like rock hard abs, and like men would be like, oh my god, she's got a gut. I was always convinced that men that were obsessed with women having these like gym bodies didn't really want a woman. Again, not saying a woman should or shouldn't. If you want to have muscles, if you want to be more muscular, more power to you. And I'm not saying that a man can't be attracted to that. But if a guy is massively obsessed with a woman having like rock hard abs and like a rock hard butt and like rock hard legs and like obsessed with that like super lean body type in a woman, and they see any woman as having any kind of like natural like softness or natural curve or shape as being a turnoff, I would question whether he's actually into women. And I feel like I see that a lot online of men that go on and body shame women that have any sort of like natural shape to them and start calling them whales or start making all kinds of like horrible insulting comments about them. And I'm like, dude, are you actually into women? Like, if you only want women that get muscular enough so that like they've got like a rock hard physique, is a woman actually what you're looking for? And again, if you're a woman and you want to get like, you know, rock hard or whatever, maybe you're an athlete or something like that, like whatever, like more power to you. I'm not saying that a man can't be attracted to you or that a man can't find you beautiful or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But a man should be attracted to more than just that, right? Like he should be attracted to you as a person, and that goes for every woman. But if a man is specifically attracted to women that have like this like muscular, rock hard, everything appearance, I've always been like, are they really into women? Or are they just looking for another man? That's starting to be the message I'm hearing. Now, I have a video talking about how I think a lot of these alpha male bros, I don't necessarily know if I call them gay. I think a lot of them are narcissists, and I think that there's some overlap there with narcissism and men who will sleep with anything, male or female. But I think there is a correlation, and I'm seeing it more and more, with a lot of these like alpha male podcast bros and like them really being in the closet. And at first it was subtle, but I feel like now it's starting to be so much more obvious. And there was actually a post, I think this might have been Andrew Tate, but I'm not sure. There was a post that one of these alpha male podcast guys posted of a woman who, I mean, she was beautiful, but she was like very muscular. Like she was obviously like some kind of power lifter or something like that. Like she was very, very muscular. But she was beautiful and she was very sexy. And it was basically like, yeah, if your girl goes to the gym this much, like you actually want a dude. And I was like, interesting, because I've always suspected that. But yet now they're finally saying the quiet part out loud. It's like you guys that were obsessed with women going to the gym and being fit are now like, well, if she's too fit, then that means you're gay, bro. Right? Like that's the message. Is like, we want a woman who's fit. And I've even had this conversation with guys on like podcasts I've been a guest on where they'd be like, well, no, a woman has to go to the gym. Like she has to work out, but like she can't get like delts that are too big. There's this obsession with, and it's a control thing partly, because it's this obsession with, I want her to look good, but she's got to look good the exact way I want her to look. So they'll say fit, but like if a woman gets too fit, then that might make them look gay. So like she can be fit, but like she can't get too muscular because that's a problem. Of course, you'll still shame her if she doesn't have visible ab muscles because she's obese if she doesn't, because that's the message now, is if a woman doesn't have visible ab muscles, she's automatically obese, which is insane. But that's a whole other conversation. With the podcast bro side of the manosphere, there's this weird thing where like she has to be fit, but now they're realizing that, well, if she's too fit, that would make him look gay. I just saw another one of these podcast bros that someone was asking what he wanted in a woman, and he said, well, she has to go to the gym and care about her health. And she doesn't have to go crazy, but she just has to care about her health. I'm like, ooh, that's gonna be the new catchphrase. They won't date a woman that doesn't fit their beauty standard. However, the beauty standard right now is shifting from like the gym booty, shifting to 90s supermodel, which is not something I'm looking forward to reliving, but like it's shifting to the 90s supermodel. So like these guys want a woman to stay in shape for health, but at the end of the day, like none of these podcast bros care at all about women's health, like at all. Like not even a little. These podcast bros are gonna hide behind health as a way to justify their completely unrealistic beauty standards. Because if these guys were presented with a woman who was simply naturally thin, but maybe she was in horrible health, like she might have like terrible health markers, but she's just naturally thin, and a woman who happens to have a little bit of extra weight on her, but she, you know, is active, she stays in shape, she's got great cardiovascular ability, she, you know, meets all the markers of health based on her, you know, medical testing and stuff like that. These alpha male bros will always pick the woman who's just naturally thin. They don't care about health. Like they're gonna hide behind the term health, but they don't actually care about your health. And I will say this over and over again, if somebody only cares that you're skinny and they don't care how you get skinny, they don't care about your health. If they only care about the end result and the aesthetic end result, but they don't care how you got there, then they don't actually care about your health. But that's gonna be the new podcast bro message, that they're gonna pretend to care about people's health. But I started to hear that so much more with these like alpha male guys, where they're starting to be like, well, I want a woman who goes to the gym, but like she doesn't have to go crazy, like she just has to be healthy. At the end of the day, they don't care about your health. At the end of the day, they just don't want you to go crazy because they don't want you to get too muscular, because first of all, that's not the current beauty standard, and they only see women as status symbols, so they want a woman who fits whatever the current beauty standard is. They also don't want you to get too muscular because then someone might think that they're gay, God forbid, which, let's be real, a lot of them are. And I think there's also overlap to the sort of conservative Christian idea of like going to the gym is actually like not serving her family or whatever. So like a lot of these podcast bro guys don't want a woman who's obsessed with the gym because, well, for one, if she goes to the gym, she's going to be exposed to other guys, and other guys are probably going to hit on her if she's attractive enough for him to want to date her. The podcast bro thing is that they have to keep women so isolated and controlled so that these women are not out in the world, so that like, God forbid, another man might see her and he might actually have to compete with another man for her. But it also will take time away from him and her taking time to like serve him, these guys are gonna say like, I want a woman who like works out and like cares about her health. But at the end of the day, it's only the end result that they care about. They don't actually care how you got there, and they don't want how you have to get to that end result, like that look, health, so to speak. They don't want that to inconvenience the man in any way. So they're gonna hide behind the story of, I want a woman to be healthy. It really has nothing to do with health at all. It just has to do with image. Now, I'm not saying that all men think this way, okay? And I want to say that because I really was hard on men in this video. I don't think all men think this way. I think there are absolutely men out there who actually care about women's health. I think there are men out there who actually are very active people and they want to find a partner who's very active. Unfortunately, it's the guys in this sort of like manosphere that tend to be like the ones online who get the most views, who tend to be the loudest, who get a lot of attention, who I also think are influencing the younger generation of men a lot more because they are so prevalent online. I know there's a lot of people that love to say things to me like, we should spend less time online, which is probably true. But also, you know who else is spending all of their time online? Kids. Like the younger generation. As an adult, like I can go out in the world and like meet people and be like, okay, not every man in the world is like the podcast bros, which is fine and probably something I should do more often. However, the younger generation of kids is online all the time, and that's who they're getting exposed to. Like those are the messages that they're seeing, and it's influencing a whole younger generation of people in a really negative way. And I've gone into this talking about like the lack of male leadership and lack of healthy male role models and all that kind of stuff, which, you know, I have other videos talking about that. That's a problem and that's why this is happening. But I really just wanted to break this down a little bit because I'm seeing so much talk about men saying they want a woman with like a fit body. And it doesn't really mean to men what I think it means to a lot of women. Because I think for a lot of women, when we hear like fit body, our brains aren't going to the same thing. And I think for a lot of women, when we hear like, oh, man wants a fit body, like, oh, he wants a woman who works out. And, you know, he wants a woman who like looks like she's really in shape, or like maybe looks like she's into fitness or something like that. And like oftentimes that's not what they mean. Oftentimes they don't care about your health. They just care about the beauty standard, and they want you to have the end result without them being inconvenienced in any way. So like they want you to look a certain way, but God forbid any of the maintenance for you to look that way inconveniences them or their life. That's the problem. And look, as someone, I realize like I'm not super skinny. Like I don't look like a fitness model by any means, but I'm a very active person and I very much prioritize healthy eating. And I found it very hard to find a guy who is also very active, who also values health and healthy eating as much as I do. And, you know, I understand that there are a lot of people that look at me and because I don't look like a fitness model, think that I don't care about that. I get people all the time that tell me to stop eating the junk food to lose weight when it's like, I don't eat junk food. Like that is what it is. Or they'll tell me to go to the gym. It's like, I work out every day. So like, I don't necessarily fit the look, which is fine for me because I'm honestly at a place right now where I'm more worried about my health than I am about fitting a certain image. It was a long road to get to that place, and I'm still a work in progress on it, for sure. I know there's a lot of guys who don't like when I explain to women what men are thinking, but like in reality, like you really can't trust men. Like I say this all the time, and I believe this with my whole soul. Don't listen to men. Just don't listen to men because men have no clue. Like men will tell you something, like they'll say they want like a fit body, but like they have no clue what that means, and they're not gonna explain it to you in a way that actually makes sense because like they don't even understand that. Or they'll say they want a woman that cares about her health when at the end of the day, like none of their actions line up with them caring about a woman's health. So stop listening to what men say. And also at the end of the day, and I say this as somebody I've mentioned in a lot of their videos, I'm a recovering pick-me girl. I used to spend so much of my life obsessing over like what men wanted and trying to figure out what men wanted. It was exhausting, and I'm not gonna lie, I made a lot of really unhealthy decisions with my body to try to fit myself into an image of what I thought men wanted. And the irony of the fact that, for one thing, it's never good enough, because unfortunately for too many men today, and I don't want to say all men, but for too many men today, they'll just keep moving the bar. Like they'll say they want something in a woman, but then they'll actually decide they want something else. Or those men will then resent a woman who actually has to make effort in order to look a certain way because that effort might inconvenience the man in some way. So I got myself into a lot of really unhealthy habits in the name of trying to fit into a certain image of what I thought men wanted. So I say this with so much love to all the women out there. Look the way you want to look. Be healthy, take care of yourself, but don't try to fit yourself into an image just because you think that it's what men want you to look like, or it's the look that men find attractive or anything. Like, look the way that you want to look. If you want to work out, you want to be super muscular and you want to be rock hard, do that. If you want to have like one of those like lean Pilates bodies, do that. If you want to be curvier and you want to be a bigger girl, do that. Like, do what makes you feel good. Strive for a body that is the body you're meant to be in, but maybe the best version or the healthiest version of the body that you have naturally. That should always be your goal, is just be healthy. I would actually encourage you to not focus on an aesthetic, to just focus on your health and focus on how you feel. I know in our current society that's a big hurdle for a lot of people, because especially women, our looks are so tied to our value. It's a hard mentality to get out of, but I would really highly encourage you to start focusing more on health and less on like what your body looks like, especially when it comes to pleasing men. So I don't want anything in this video to convince women that they have to fit into a certain image or be a certain way or anything like that. Like, honestly, I firmly believe you should just be yourself, do what works for you, and then, you know, you will attract a partner who, you know, fits that life or that image. And, you know, if you're constantly trying to fit yourself into an image of what you think someone else wants, it's gonna get exhausting because you're trying to fit yourself into a box that you probably weren't even meant to be in the first place. Yeah, I thought I would woman-splain the manosphere a little bit to the women out there. And again, when guys go around ranting that they want like a fit body, they don't even know what they mean by that at the end of the day. So like, you're not expected to know what they mean. Take care of yourself, strive for health, and whatever comes as a result of that, honor that. Loving your body where it is now, even if your body isn't healthy right now. Love your body, honor where it is now, move your body in loving ways, feed your body in nourishing foods that make you feel good, and at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. If you want to check out more information on like masculine, feminine energies and fitness myths, I have a video about that. I'm actually very proud of that video because I have a lot of information there. Yeah, I have a lot of other videos too about body image and dating and all that kind of stuff like that. Pretty privilege. I have a lot of videos about that. I actually have a body image playlist on here if you want to check that out. So a lot of other videos about that if you want to check those out. I would love to hear your thoughts on, you know, this topic or any other topic requests. Any engagement is great. Like, subscribe, leave a comment below. If you're a woman and would like to connect to her dark feminine energy, which is amazing for healing, especially if you've been caught up in like being a pick-me girl or like trying to please men or trying to conform to be what men want, like dark feminine energy is a really wonderful way of like learning to escape from all that stuff and just like learn to connect with yourself. So check out the Dark Feminine Energy Guided Journal. It's available on Amazon. Link is in the description box below, along with links to courses, masterclasses, and all my social media links. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.